everyone, and welcome to season 4 of Look Down There, the show where we talk about all the things we don't talk about. I'm your host, Michelle Lamore. Today, my guest is an award-winning, internationally published boudoir photographer, certified sexologist, intimacy and body image coach, and yoga instructor, if that's not enough. She is an artist, an alchemist, which I absolutely love that word, and an advocate who ardently works for her clients and the causes she believes in. Please welcome my guest today, Angela Michelle. Hi, Angela.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, I'm so happy that we connected. So I met or re-met Angela in a class that we were taking together as we're both studying intimacy coordination. And she reached out, in a little side message. And, I think you recognized me from the festival because you're in San Antonio. Yes.
I am. Yeah.
And I did the San Antonio Burlesque Festival years ago. I don't even know when it was, but you're like, I think I have some photos of you.
Yes. I think it was maybe 2013, maybe 2014. It was
forever and ever ago. Yeah. And so we connected that way, or reconnected that way. And I'm thankful for that, because as I got into looking at your story and everything that you're doing and calling yourself an intimacy alchemist, I was like, whoa, that is that. I love it. So I am so excited to talk about your story, because it's very interesting to hear how you got here, what brought you here to this moment.
Yeah, a lot of things. I guess, do you want the whole story?
Oh, I'm here for it. Yeah,
okay.
I'm here for as much as you want to share.
Sure. So I'm very much an open book, and it kind of goes into a lot of the work I do with advocacy. My life really changed in 2016. I had a stroke at the age of 37, and it actually completely took eyesight out of one eye. So I'm completely blind in my right eye as a result of that stroke. And up until that point, photography was what I did. It's my passion, and I loved it. I felt like that was my calling. And when this happened, I realized that my health was going to affect my ability to do what I love. And so I really had to take a step back and think, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Where am I going? And I was really lucky that I had teamed up with a local sexologist here in San Antonio to kind of cross promote my boudoir photography. And so when this all happened with my stroke, she kind of took me aside and was like, would you want to study sexology? She's like, you already have the background for it. My degree is cultural anthropology. My focus was sex and death rituals. So I kind of had a little bit of the background there for it. And then my work as a boudoir photographer, I was always, either talking about sex or intimacy. It just kind of comes up. I always say that as a photographer, there's something about someone, taking their clothes off in front of you that just strips them also emotionally, and they open up. Mm-hmm. And so the people were sharing very intimate details. And, my sexologist friend was like, I think you'd be really good at this. And, if you're interested, I would love to work with you and take you and help you to do this. And so I made a decision that while I was still going to do photography, I needed to look at other avenues. And really, I kind of saw this as, I'm still doing the same work I was doing as a photographer. I'm just using a different way of doing it. So, photography, the camera, that's the medium I was using to empower people, to get people to explore different facets of themselves. And I'm still doing all that. It's just in a different way. So I took a few years, and it took me, honestly, almost 4 years to get through the program, about 3. I was going through a lot with my health after the stroke. I also developed a very rare lung condition, and I ended up needing open heart surgery. I don't know if you can see my large scar. And so I was, going to hundreds of doctor's appointments a year and therapy and all this stuff. And so all at the same time, I was still running my photography business and I was training to become a sexologist. I was officially certified in 2019. And then I was planning to really kind of do both, and the pandemic hit. And it just kind of threw a wrench. And because I am high risk with my lungs, I knew I was planning to continue doing photography, but I realized I couldn't at that point. So I took a step back, and it really allowed me to focus on sex education, on the intimacy coaching. And that's what I've been doing through this whole pandemic. And it's worked really well, because I think what I've realized being in a chronically ill and disabled body is I can't work with my body sometimes, but I can still work with my mind and my heart. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the work that I do is holding that space for people to explore and to process their emotions. I always tell people I'm not a therapist. That's not what I do. But I am a coach who knows how to hold that space for people. Mm-hmm. And, if my life hadn't thrown me that curveball, I don't know if I would be doing what I am. But in that way, I tell people I am grateful, because my experience ultimately transformed me into who I am now. And I think that's why I'm super attached to the word alchemist or alchemy, is it is that transformation. I took something that was heartbreaking for me in so many ways, but I was like, how can I use this? How can I transform this into something and grow even more into the person that I am?
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that and for your vulnerability there. I'm curious what your relationship was like with your body before your health issues, and what it is like now, or
Sure.
like your relationship to your body now, and also how it's changed how you relate to other people, like the people that you're shooting.
Like photographing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Body image was something I struggled with as a teenager. I mean, I would say from the time I was like 10 years old, honestly, all through my teens, all through my 20s. It really held me back from living my life. And I look back and I'm like, I was totally fine. Like, I was a size 5. I was petite. I was a thin little thing. I was really cute, but I didn't see that. I saw every flaw, every negative thing. And I didn't live life. And I think I had just started to really step into my own when my health issues started. I think part of what attracted me to boudoir is there's this very healing aspect to it. And I think really I was healing myself. And I don't think I realized it at the time. But I think so often we're drawn to work that heals others in ways that we need healing. And so a lot of the work I was doing with boudoir and with clients who were struggling with body image, I didn't realize how much I was working on my own body image at the time. Mm. And in 2016 was the year of my stroke. And it was also the first time I let myself be photographed as like in boudoir by another photographer, because it was me kind of. And this happened before my stroke. So I had had my first photo shoot with a professional boudoir photographer, and I really got to see myself. And honestly, at that point, I was the heaviest I had ever been. My health had been affecting me for a while, but I didn't understand that I had a disease that was making my body act the way it was. And part of it was they were throwing me on a medication that makes you gain weight. And so over, the course of from my 20s to my late 30s, I had put on 100 pounds. And it's so weird to me that I was more confident weighing 250 pounds than I ever was at 150. But it was because I had done that internal work. Mm-hmm. And I realized that even with my clients, it doesn't matter. It does not matter like what size they are. We all have our struggles. And I have met people who are size 2 who struggle with body image. And I have met women who are size 20 who they don't struggle because they did the work. So it's really this internal shift that has to happen. And for me, the illness and the disability, I'm invisibly disabled. You don't see it. You can't see my lungs. You don't know that they're compromised. But what it did for me in the body image world was it just made me approach it differently. And I think so often in the body image world, I hear, and I used to say all the time myself, is appreciate your body for what it can do.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a problem with that because it ties it to capitalism, to production, that my body has to do something to be worthy. And as someone who was really sick at one point, I was on oxygen 24/7 for a few years. I was like, okay, that doesn't work for me because my body can't do what I want it to do. And that makes me more mad. And I realized that for me, the path was pleasure. Because when I instead of seeing it as what can my body do, I thought, what does my body allow me to experience? And it allows me to experience pleasure. And that can be sex with my husband, or it can be masturbation, or it can just be taking my dog for a nice stroll, or just petting my dog or my cat. It's little pleasures in life. And when we approach body image that way, it takes away the production. It takes away this idea that it has to do something to be worthy of love, of pleasure. It's just worthy because it allows me to experience. And even at my worst, even when I was very close to death, I still was able to find pleasure in every little thing. In, the look of my husband would give me, in hugging my dad, in, taking my mom shopping, just little things that gave me pleasure. Even at my sickest, my body was still able to give me that. And when I approached it that way, it just shifted everything for me. And it shifted the way that I coach other clients now. Because I'm no longer telling people, appreciate what your body for what it can do. Because maybe it can't do what they want it to do. And that's okay. So I just tell them, well, what does it allow you to experience? And it comes back to this idea of gratitude. And for me, that's very tied to like the yoga philosophy of appreciation and gratitude and acceptance. And, I didn't become a yoga instructor until after my stroke. Yoga had been a part of my life for years, but it was the stroke that pushed me through teacher training because of how much it helped me heal in my anger and my frustration of what my body was going through and how everything played out, how when I had my stroke, 2 hospitals missed it. They didn't recognize it as a stroke, and that led to delayed care. That ultimately led to my vision loss. It also, I didn't mention this before, but I was pregnant for the first time when I had my stroke. So I miscarried and I got told I couldn't ever have children. So I was angry at a lot of things, and turning to yoga allowed me to accept and move through all that. And so I became a yoga instructor because I realized that the power that yoga had was in the philosophy and the daily living, not in the asana, not in the poses.
Right.
And when I started bringing that idea of acceptance and love into my body image work, it just kind of all rolled together for me. Like this idea of, studying sexology and appreciating pleasure and, just approaching the body from a different perspective. And so it really was the catalyst for so many changes that I went through and that ultimately changed like the way that I work, the way that I approach photography, the way that I approach coaching, all of that.
Yeah, there's so many great things in there that you said. I like that you said that we're drawn to the things that heal people where we need the most healing. And I used to run a burlesque school in Chicago, and I would run these boudoir sessions. And so I would work with a photographer, maybe a makeup and hair person, and then I would help with like styling and doing the poses and all of that. And so it is such an intimate thing to be a witness of, right? To take people from, their fear of exposing a shoulder, perhaps, to finding them suddenly being comfortable in their body and being present and feeling beautiful for maybe the first time. And just witnessing that on my end really opened my eyes, as a dancer who grew up with like very strict body image rules and lines, seeing that there's so much beauty in all bodies, and just, it's like, so those moments are so special to me. And I'm so glad that you're the one, shepherding people into their bodies and into experiencing pleasure, which really is about being present. So something that, yoga helps you with, and where you're present enough, even in your darkest times, to where you can notice a thing like a look from your husband, or, how your cat feels when you touch it, and just those little moments that really add up. And I really love that you said it's about what your body can experience rather than what it does. Right. I never really thought about that, like, as far as, what we can produce, like what our worth is so tied to like what our body can do. But, God, what we can experience.
Yeah.
So much. Yeah.
And I always tell people we're so adaptable. We can adapt. I think sometimes our brain keeps us from adapting because we get, and this ties into yoga to me, because we talk about like attachment, right? And when we become attached to something and then we lose it, then we have suffering. So it's almost like you have to detach from what you thought in order to experience what is. And there's so much beauty in what is, but if you're so focused on what was, then you're not present in what is, and you're missing so much beautiful shit.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So you talk about on your site that you view these shoots as a ritual. So talk more about that.
Sure. So I mentioned my background is cultural anthropology, and I studied sex and death rituals. So it was probably that I was studying this while I was, photographing people. But the more I thought about it, like, even, okay, take away boudoir. Think of all the times we hire professional photographers. There's maternity, there's newborn, there's, all the 1 year, the, milestone ages. In our culture, in Hispanic culture, there's the quinceañera, there's the marriage, the engagement session. And I was like, wow, all these are tied to milestones that we're almost going through a ritual that transforms us. And a purpose of a ritual is this liminal state. And the liminal state is a place of possibility. You're in between. You're not this, but you're not that yet. And that's where the transformation happens. So when I started to think of photography, of a photo shoot as a ritual, it just really changed my perspective, because I saw that I think the power lies in that someone can see themselves outside of themselves. They get to see a different perspective, but also they get to have agency over how they want to be seen. And there's so much power in seeing ourselves how we want to be seen, or how we feel, that lets us really embody that. And I think for me, it's that it's an embodied experience, a photo shoot. You're literally using your body, but you're also using your heart and your mind and your soul. You're using all parts of you. And the ritual is a transformation, because maybe someone has been struggling to see their beauty or their worth, or to just feel connected to their body. And through the photo shoot, that's the realm of possibility. That's where the magic happens. And when they leave there, they see themselves as this beauty, as this goddess, as, this powerful person, whatever they want to embody. They see themselves as that. Then they can really step into that. It allows them to really be it, because they see it. And I think we see something, then we believe it.
Yeah. And you act as the mirror. Like, let me show you how beautiful you are. Let me find this this angle that maybe you've never seen, or, how your neck meets your clavicle, or how your hand is placed, and just these really intimate, vulnerable moments. And on the note of intimacy, how would you describe or define intimacy?
To me, it's a closeness, and it's not always sexual. I mean, and I think, there's intimacy with ourselves, with our own body, and that's how we connect to our own body. There's intimacy with our family, with our parents, our siblings, intimacy with our friends, and then obviously intimacy with sexual partners. But it's this closeness. And so it can be sexual, but it doesn't always have to be. Mm-hmm. And so when I think of it that way, I just think of it as connecting, being able to connect. And, whether that's connecting with your own body, with your own mind, with your own heart, or whether it's connecting with another human. Mm-hmm. I think that's what intimacy is for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And connection, even with ourselves, can be very, very challenging. Even if you've been through everything that you've been through, and you've learned and grown in all these ways, I'm sure that you still have moments where you don't feel connected to yourself, and you have to bring yourself back to yourself. What are some ways that you do that?
Sure. So for me, breath is always really powerful. And maybe it's because I literally have a lung disease that breath became so important to me. But I think we can really come back and connect to ourselves through our breath, through connecting to our breath. I also love doing things like tapping, just like simple like tapping movements. It like is a reminder, like I'm here, I'm safe, I'm in my body right now, I'm present. So I try to find things to bring myself back to the moment. And it's usually for me, breath or touch. But it can be any of my senses, really. Mm-hmm. Usually when I experience something like that, it's for me, usually in a medical setting. I have medical PTSD from my experience with the hospitals and the stroke. And so when I feel really disembodied, it tends to be in those settings. And having the tools to like connect to my breath, or just even like a tap, like a touching of my own body, just kind of centers me and brings me back in.
Mm. And what is something that has given you pleasure in a most recent time?
Ooh, well, I guess if I'm going to go with my most recent, it's, the pandemic has been hard, and I really had to isolate, and that's hard for me. So recently I just started going back out. I'm still being very cautious. But I took my first in-person yoga class, and, it's great to be a teacher, but you still need to take a class. Like it's still, you get to receive instead of giving all the time. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to receive a class like in person was just really beautiful and so pleasurable for me, because it was like breathing and connecting with other humans in the same room. And that was something that really been missing for me for the past 2.5 years. So
yeah, it is so special to share those moments with other people. I mean, I went to a yoga class this morning, and, I like what you said about it's more about the gratitude and about the spiritual practice of it than like, how long can you hold a push-up, Yeah. And I feel like we tend to get more into the workout side of it, rather than like really noticing like what these movements can really do for, our spiritual muscles, our spiritual fitness. But I don't know if you have this, but like I'm still having a tough time in class, especially with yoga, because there is so much breath that I'm like, like I wear my mask the whole time, and I'm like in the back, and, and I'm still having a hard time like relaxing into it. So are you experiencing that as well?
Yeah. So I went to 2 classes this week, and it was literally my first time like since the pandemic. And I wore my mask, like I was double masked, and I am like fully vaccinated, as boosted as I can be, but my doctors have told me like, yes, most people will be okay, but you've got a very serious lung disease and we need you to keep doing what you need to do to protect yourself. So I was in my yoga class with 2 masks and no one around me is wearing a mask, which is, they're doing them. I get it. So yeah, there is a little bit, like I did have a little bit of that like fear of like, just like tenseness, I guess, of like, is this safe for me? Like, am I okay here? And like you
Yeah.
said, because there's so much breath, like we're literally like encouraged to do deep breathing as we're doing these asanas. And it's like, okay, no one else is wearing a mask. Like, I'm hoping this double mask works for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is hard, but I've also realized I can't just keep living my life in a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sure the pandemic's been hard on so many people for so many different reasons. And I think for someone who's chronically ill and disabled, it's been hard because we have felt very dismissed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, we don't matter. Like we're the weakest link. So it's okay if we're, not a part of society. And it's hard because as humans, we want to connect. We have this desire to connect. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel you. I'm still I'm very slowly coming out, but I'm struggling a little to feel safe for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, I want you to explain your philosophy of finding your edge requires intention and attention.
Yeah. So this actually is inspired by yoga. And because I think when we practice yoga, we have to do the same thing. We have to have, like, why am I doing this pose? Right? Like, what is the purpose of this pose? And then we really have to pay attention. Like, because, and, we're both in IDC training. So we talk about like a spectrum of like, you know, yes, no, right? And in the middle is growth, right? In the middle is like, this is unsafe, this is safe. And in the middle is uncomfortable, but growth, because I think we grow through the uncomfortable. So when we're in a yoga pose or when we're exploring things sexually, sometimes we are pushing our edge and we have to understand why we're doing that. We have to have an intention and also really pay attention. Like, how does my body feel? Do I feel okay? Is this safe? Like, yes, this is uncomfortable. Like, maybe it's a sexual position you've never done. Like, it's uncomfortable, but am I okay? And you have to really just pay attention. So I think you have to have both, like attention and intention, in order for it to be safe and to really have that growth that we're looking for, whether it's sexually or yoga or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say movement with intention is power. And I feel like if we know, what it is that we're working towards, I use that for dance. Like when I teach dance, in order to make a movement stronger, I like to think about, what is the intention? Where is it grounded? Where is the energy flow? And it's easier for me to think about intentions physically, like physical storytelling or dancing or whatever. But I will tell you, it's taken me a really long time and I'm still not super great at it. But like in yoga, when they're like, think of your intention, I panic. I panic because I'm like, what if I choose the wrong one? And then it just becomes an exercise of trust. And so then I'm like, well, then I'll just, whatever comes to mind, the first thing, I'll just stick with it. And then I'll start thinking about it more and be like, well, maybe this is a better intention. And then suddenly the class is over, Angela. What am I going to do? How can I help like settle into an intention like that?
I think you nailed it. I think you have to trust. I think that, what comes up for us initially is what maybe we need in that moment, right? And we have to trust that where our brain took us is what our body needs in this moment, and what our heart needs and what our mind needs. Intention, it can be like, okay, what's the intention of my practice? Like, why am I practicing? Or it could just be like, my intention today is, to be powerful. And I'm going to think about that in each pose. My intention is to be present. My intention is, to love. So every pose I'm going to do, I'm going to think of, love, or how I love this part of my body, or how I can experience and embody love in this movement. But I think just trusting that whatever came up for us is what we need in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right.
And it's always going to change. It's always
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been thinking about intention a lot because I just started doing the artist way. Have you done that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you have to take yourself out on these artist dates.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I really do fill my day and my life with a lot of inspiration, but really what it comes down to is intention. Like, okay, I am not just spontaneously or happen to have some time where I can do that, but it's the intention of I am blocking out a half hour to do this and only this. And yeah, so just thinking about the intention and like the power that comes with the intention.
And you also have to have the attention, like, because if your brain's not there in that moment, then you are going to maybe miss your intention or put yourself in an unsafe like space, right? So we have to have both.
Yeah. I love everything that you're doing. I am so excited for all that you're doing, and thrilled that you get to help people in the way that you help people with your unique and empathetic experience and ability to connect with others. It's a really special thing. And you've mentioned a few times how we're made to connect with each other. And, I hope that you are able to find those connections in this post-pandemic world and make the world a brighter place. I know you are. I know you're doing it already.
Thank you. I have all the intentions too.
Yes. And I am here to give you my attention. Okay.
Love it.
Yes. Okay, Angela Michelle, where can people find you or work with you or follow you, wherever you want to send them?
Sure. So I've made it really easy. My website is theintimacyartist.com. And on Instagram, if you want to see my photography work, it's Raven Red Photo. And if you want to do look at my sex coaching and body image coaching, that is Instagram. The handle is Intimacy Artist.
Beautiful.
Know that on that one. Know that.
Thank you. Yes. Is there anything that you want to add? Anything that we haven't touched upon in this session here?
I just want people to know that we are all worthy of love and pleasure. And, there's a lot of obstacles that get in the way, and that's just noise. Mm-hmm. And just that everyone's worthy.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you everyone for joining us today on our very first episode of season 4. It's time for you to spread the love. Go and follow us at I Look Down There, or follow me at Michelle Amore. Tell your friends, tell your lovers, tell everybody you meet. This is an important show. We're doing good work here. And I'm so grateful to talk to such amazing guests like Angela Michelle. So everyone, remember that confidence comes from the bottom up. So grab a mirror and look down there. Until next time.